Hi, Jessie. Can you see me? I hope you can. I hope I'm back. I know that two of my cats can see me, but I don't know if you guys can. Yep, looks like we got one. I think the internet went out for me today because, hey, can you hear me? The little thing indicating microphone isn't, the sound isn't going up and down. But if you can hear me, that's all fine. Oh, you could hear me before. If I was sitting here talking and talking and you couldn't hear anything, you would probably have mentioned it. They're staring at me. Hey, Paniscan. Awesome. So we've got Jesse, Danny, and John. Paniscan. And we are waiting on one more person, I think. Are we? Not sure. But yes, the creature, well, Frankenstein has just destroyed the female creature before actually bringing it to life. And the monster was peeking from the window, and now he's really pissed off. He is not happy. So it was very annoying. But anyway, apparently you guys lost me with the wiliness of a snake. So the creature goes, I will watch with the wiliness of a snake that I may sting with its venom. Man, you shall repent of the injuries you inflict. That's where we got up to. And then Victor Frankenstein says, Devils cease, and do not poison the air with these sounds of malice. I have declared my resolution to you, and I am no coward to bend beneath words. Leave me. I am inexorable. And then the creature goes, It is well. I go, but remember, I shall be with you on your wedding night. I started forward and exclaimed, Villain, before you sign my death warrant, be sure that you are yourself safe. I would have seized him, but he eluded me and quitted the house with precipitation. In a few moments, I saw him in his boat, which shot across the waters with an arrowy swiftness and was soon lost amidst the waves. Hi again, Jesse. So, didn't go very well. Victor is he's very something to stand up in front of an 8 foot tall monster and be like, no, piss off. Learn these unholy arts yourself. All was again silent, but his words rang in my ears. I burned with rage to pursue the murderer of my peace and precipitate him into the ocean. I walked up and down my room hastily and perturbed, while my imagination conjured up 1,000 images to torment and sting me. Why had I not followed him and closed with him in mortal strife? But I had suffered him to depart, and he had directed his course towards the mainland. I shuddered to think who might be the next victim sacrificed to his insatiate revenge. And then I thought again of his words, I will be with you on your wedding night. That, then, was the period fixed for the fulfillment of my destiny. In that hour I should die, and at once satisfy and extinguish his malice. The prospect did not move me to fear, yet when I thought of my beloved Elizabeth, my sister and fiancée, of her tears and endless sorrow when she should find her lover so barbarously snatched from her, tears, the first I had shed for many months, streamed from my eyes, and I resolved not to fall before my enemy without a bitter struggle. So, a wife for a wife. Oh, God, Victor's like, I just wondered why I didn't fight him Because he's enormous? Oh, he better not. He better not lay a finger on Henry Clerval. Where are you going, Fitz? Oh, he's looking for his water fountain. Do that later. The night passed, and the sun rose from the ocean. My feelings became calmer, if it may be called calmness when the violence of rage sinks into the depths of despair. I left the house, the horrid scene of the last night's contention, and walked on the beach of the sea, which I almost regarded as an insuperable barrier between me and my fellow creatures. Nay, a wish that such should prove the fact stole across me. I desired that I might pass my life on that barren rock, wearily, it is true, but uninterrupted by any sudden shock of misery. If I returned, it was to be sacrificed, or to see those whom I most loved die under the grasp of a demon whom I had myself created. That's fair, actually. I walked about the isle like a restless spectre, separated from all it loved and miserable in the separation. When it became noon and the sun rose higher, I lay down on the grass and was overpowered by a deep sleep. I had been awake the whole of the preceding night. My nerves were agitated and my eyes inflamed by watching and misery. The sleep into which I now sank refreshed me, and when I awoke, I again felt as if I belonged to a race of human beings like myself, and I began to reflect upon what had passed with greater composure. Yet still the words of the fiend rang in my ears like a death knell. They appeared like a dream, yet distinct and oppressive as a reality. The sun had far descended, and I still sat on the shore, satisfying my appetite, which had become ravenous, with an oaten cake, when I saw a fishing boat land close to me, and one of the men brought me a packet. It contained letters from Geneva and one from Clerval, entreating me to join him. He said that he was wearing away his time fruitlessly where he was, that letters from the friends he had formed in London desired his return to complete the negotiation they had entered into for his Indian enterprise. He could not any longer delay his departure, but as his journey to London might be followed, even sooner than he now conjectured, by his longer voyage, he entreated me to bestow as much of my society on him as I could spare. He wants to see Victor before he goes to India forever, to do horrible things, because that's what people did. He besought me, therefore, to leave my solitary isle and to meet him at Perth, that we might proceed southwards together. This letter, in a degree, recalled me to life, and I determined to quit my island at the expiration of 2 days. Yet, before I departed, there was a task to perform, on which I shuddered to reflect. Evelyn's saying she'll be late. Please start without her. I'm not sure she realised that I was starting at 7, not 7:30. Text her back after this. Before I departed, there was a task to perform on which I shuddered to reflect. I must pack up my chemical instruments, and for that purpose I must enter the room which had been the scene of my odious work, and I must handle those utensils, the sight of which was sickening to me. The next morning at daybreak, I summoned sufficient courage and unlocked the door of my laboratory. The remains of the half-finished creature, whom I had destroyed, lay scattered on the floor, and I almost felt as if I had mangled the living flesh of a human being. I paused to collect myself and then entered the chamber. With trembling hand, I conveyed the instruments out of the room, but I reflected that I ought not to leave the relics of my work to excite the horror and suspicion of the peasants, and I accordingly put them into a basket with a great quantity of stones, and laying them up, determined to throw them into the sea that very night. And in the meantime I sat upon the beach, employed in cleaning and arranging my chemical apparatus. What are you doing, madam? What are you doing? Flora. My dinner is in the oven, and I'm going to have it when I finish reading. That's right. Nothing could be more complete than the alteration that had taken place in my feelings since the night of the appearance of the demon. Fitz wants to go out. My door creaks like that because I'm the neighborhood witch, and all the parents tell their kids that they'll drop them off at my house if they don't eat their whatever kids don't like eating. Broccoli? It's just a neighborhood requirement thing. The night of the appearance of the demon, I had before regarded my promise with a gloomy despair as a thing that, with whatever consequences, must be fulfilled. But I now felt as if a film had been taken from before my eyes, and that I, for the first time, saw clearly. The idea of renewing my labours did not for one instant occur to me. The threat I had heard weighed on my thoughts, but I did not reflect that a voluntary act of mine could avert it. Stop it, madam. I had resolved in my own mind that to create another like the fiend I had first made would be an act of the basest and most atrocious selfishness, and I banished from my mind every thought that could lead to a different conclusion. The Broccoli Witch of Redacted New Zealand. Yeah, if those kids don't want to eat their broccoli, I'll have it. It's fucking expensive. Come on then, Nobi. If you want to sit up here, then sit up here. You'd think they'd understand that when I set up the light and the little talking machine, microphone, that, that's when just don't bother me for like an hour. Anyway, between 2 and 3 in the morning, the moon rose, and I then, putting my basket aboard a little skiff, sailed out about 4 miles from the shore. There is a scratching board somewhere in the house, but the others don't use it, so I'm not sure where it is. Stop it. Cow. I sailed out about 4 miles from the shore. The scene was perfectly solitary. A few boats were turning towards land, but I sailed away from them. I felt as if I was about the commission of a dreadful crime, and avoided with shuddering anxiety any encounter with my fellow creatures. At one time, the moon, which had before been clear, was suddenly overspread by a thick cloud. Just dropped an empty Coke can off the side of the couch. Just to make her stop fixating on that. One time the moon, which had before been clear, was suddenly overspread by a thick cloud, and I took advantage of the moment of darkness and cast my basket into the sea. I listened to the gurgling sound as it sank, and then sailed away from the spot. The sky became clouded, but the air was pure, although chilled by the northeast breeze that was then rising. But it refreshed me and filled me with such agreeable sensations that I resolved to prolong my stay on the water, and fixing the rudder in a direct position, stretched myself at the bottom of the boat. Clouds hid the moon, everything was obscure, and I heard only the sound of the boat as its keel cut through the waves. The murmur lulled me, and in a short time I slept soundly. I do not know how long I remained in this situation, but when I awoke, I found that the sun had already mounted considerably. The wind was high, and the waves continually threatened the safety of my little skiff. I found that the wind was northeast and must have driven me far from the coast from which I had embarked. I endeavoured to change my course, but quickly found that if I again made the attempt, the boat would be instantly filled with water. Thus situated, my only resource was to drive before the wind. Oh, Victor. Oh, Victor. I confess that I felt a few sensations of terror. I had no compass with me, and was so slenderly acquainted with the geography of this part of the world that the sun was of little benefit to me. I might be driven into the wide Atlantic and feel all the tortures of starvation, or be swallowed up in the immeasurable waves that roared and buffeted around me. I had already been out many hours, and felt the torment of a burning thirst, a prelude to my other sufferings. I looked on the heavens, which were covered by clouds that flew before the wind, only to be replaced by others. I looked upon the sea. It was to be my grave. Fiend, I exclaimed, your task is already fulfilled. I thought of Elizabeth, of my father, and of Clerval, all left behind, on whom the monster might satisfy his sanguinary and merciless passions. This idea plunged me into a reverie so despairing and frightful that even now, when the scene is on the point of closing before me forever, I shudder to reflect on it. It's a long chapter. Getting a really decent amount of Frankenstein. Some hours passed thus, but by degrees, as the sun declined towards the horizon, the wind died away into a gentle breeze, and the sea became free from breakers. But these gave place to a heavy swell. I felt sick and hardly able to hold the rudder, when suddenly I saw a line of high land towards the south. Almost spent, as I was, by fatigue and the dreadful suspense I endured for several hours, this sudden certainty of life rushed like a flood of warm joy to my heart, and tears gushed from my eyes. Just taking a second to think, I don't know if you all know the ending of the first Friday the 13th movie, back in the olden days. I wonder if the final girl falling asleep in a boat in the middle of the lake is in some way comes from this point in Frankenstein. That does happen, but some other things happen, so I haven't actually spoiled it for you. How mutable are our feelings, and how strange is that clinging love we have of life, even in the excess of misery. I constructed another sail with a part of my dress and eagerly steered my course towards the land. Yeah, right? And then just like, and then not to spoil anything, but something of a Frankenstein comes and grabs her. I don't know if it's intentional or not. Pretty cool though, if it is. Steered my course towards the land. It had a wild and rocky appearance, but as I approached nearer, I easily perceived the traces of cultivation. I saw vessels near the shore, and found myself suddenly transported back to the neighborhood of civilized man. I carefully traced the windings of the land and hailed a steeple, which I at length saw issuing from behind a small promontory. Promontory? Promontory? We just don't know. Nobody knows. As I was in a state of extreme debility, I resolved to sail directly towards the town, as a place where I could most easily procure nourishment. Fortunately, I had money with me. As I turned the promontory, I perceived a small, neat town and a good harbour, which I entered, my heart bounding with joy at my unexpected escape. As I was occupied in fixing the boat and arranging the sails, several people crowded towards the spot. They seemed much surprised at my appearance, but instead of offering me any assistance, whispered together with gestures that at any other time might have produced in me a slight sensation of alarm. As it was, I merely remarked that they spoke English, and I therefore addressed them in that language. My good friends, said I, will you be so kind as to tell me the name of this town and inform me where I am? You will know that soon enough, replied a man with a hoarse voice. Maybe you are come to a place that will not prove much to your taste, but you will not be consulted as to your quarters, I promise you. I was exceedingly surprised on receiving so rude an answer from a stranger, and I was also disconcerted on perceiving the frowning and angry countenances of his companions. Why do you answer me so roughly? I replied. Surely it is not the custom of Englishmen to receive strangers so inhospitably. I do not know, said the man, what the custom of the English may be, but it is the custom of the Irish to hate villains. If you don't know the difference between English and Irish, Victor, doesn't matter what else you've done. You fucked up. While this strange dialogue continued, I perceived the crowd rapidly increase. Their faces expressed a mixture of curiosity and anger, which annoyed and in some degree alarmed me. I inquired the way to the inn, but no one replied. I then moved forward, and a murmuring sound arose from the crowd as they followed and surrounded me, when an ill-looking man approaching tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Come, sir, you must follow me to Mr. Kerwin's to give an account of yourself." Who is Mr. Kerwin? Why am I to give an account of myself? Is not this a free country? Ay, sir, free enough for honest folk. Mr. Kerwin is a magistrate, and you are to give an account of the death of a gentleman who was found murdered here last night. Oh, they think he's a murderer, not just English. This answer startled me, but I presently recovered myself. I was innocent. That could easily be proved. Accordingly, I followed my conductor in silence and was led to one of the best houses in the town. I was ready to sink from fatigue and hunger, but being surrounded by a crowd, I thought it politic to rouse all my strength, that no physical debility might be construed into apprehension or conscious guilt. Little did I then expect the calamity that was in a few moments to overwhelm me and extinguish in horror and despair all fear of ignominy or death. I must pause here, for it requires all my fortitude to recall the memory of the frightful events which I am about to relate, in proper detail, to my recollection. The end of the surprisingly long chapter 20. Much to think about. Except the main thing I'm thinking about is the supermarket pizza that's in the oven, and it's going to be my dinner, and I'm going to have it very soon. So thank you everybody for joining me. Having story time is kind of it's therapeutic for me, and I hope you guys are enjoying it. I hope I can read you a Chuck Tingle book, because I've never actually read one. I've just seen the covers, and that's always been good enough for me because they're amazing. But yeah, thank you for joining me, and I'll see you again tomorrow for more Frankenstein. Yes. It's going to be wonderful. So be safe, wash your hands, watch out for each other, and yeah, do what you can. I'm a doctor. Bye.